Welcome to episode 4 of
Paranormal Noise,
where the paranormal is discussed
by the abnormal.
I'm LC.
And I'm Kenzie.
Hey guys, so we're coming back at you tonight, and we actually have a topic, believe it or not. We are going to be talking about episode 1, season 1 of Hellier.
It's called The Midnight Children.
Now, if you haven't seen the show, haven't heard anything about it, don't know anything about it, don't listen. Just stop listening. Go watch it.
Yes, because this is going to contain spoilers.
Oh, yeah. Major spoilers. So this documentary is a story of these two people, Greg and Dana
Newkirk.
Greg and Dana Newkirk.
They're both journalists and paranormal investigators.
Mm-hmm. Together they run Paranormal Museum.
Paramuseum.
Paramuseum.
Called. And
Traveling Occult. I believe that the docuseries is produced by Planet Weird. I'll have to double check that.
Yeah, I can't remember what it said at the start.
I'm trying to give proper credit to everything to this.
But yes, in my opinion, it was a great paranormal docuseries. What did you think?
Can you really qualify it as a paranormal docuseries? Because it encompasses more than just the paranormal.
No, it's all encompassing of the paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
Because, okay, when you first brought this up to me, and we watched episode 1, I was like, yeah, because I'm not one to watch stuff about aliens. And
this is very heavily alien focused.
Yeah, that's where it started off, but it leads in a completely different direction.
We're getting ahead of ourselves there.
Which was awesome. Yes, but I'm leaving the breadcrumbs for the people so that they can continue listening if they haven't seen it and don't want to watch it, but would rather listen to us go back and forth about what we feel and think about the series.
So anyway, the documentary series starts off with a guy talking about synchronicities and coincidences in life.
Yes, and for those that don't know what a synchronicity is, it is simultaneous occurrences of events that can appear to be related, but they actually have no discernible connections. So they kind of just randomly happen. But when synchronicities do happen, it means that you're headed down the right path. I know personally I've experienced these in my own spiritual journeys, and I believe you have too, right, Kenzie?
Yeah.
Okay, and together we've experienced them, and I guess individually when we've, how do I want to say it, done meditations or whatnot on our own, and then dots have connected down the road as we talk about our things.
But they explain that a lot better in the documentary.
Right, I'm just throwing in what
I know, we're summarizing. Yes, I know.
I'm just throwing in what we have experienced.
Yes.
Because it actually occurs throughout the whole documentary itself with all these different people. It's very interesting.
Okay, so it starts off with a guy who is explaining all this. I can't remember his name.
I don't recall.
But he goes into, explains it in very good detail. He really hooks you within the first 5 minutes of the docuseries. You are hooked.
Yeah, it's very good, and I think it's filmed very well too.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a few time jumps throughout it. They go back and forth talking about what has happened and what has led them to the point where they started filming. So
Greg has been a part of the paranormal world. He states in the docuseries for about 20 years. When he was younger, him and a bunch of his friends formed a group called Ghost Hunters Inc., which was more just like a bunch of kids having some fun
in their hometown.
Yeah, so it wasn't really all that serious.
No, not really.
That they were doing,
and they had left. From what he had said, they just left the website up. They had done it for about 10 years. He moved from Pennsylvania out to Seattle, and they just left the website up and would randomly check the emails that the website would get.
So what's interesting is that this email that Greg received actually came to that website, to that email address, to this less than reputable group of boys that are standing there in a photo with BB guns and medieval weapons.
Yeah. It's kind of, it's like, whatever led this random person to find this website and say, oh, I'm going to email them about this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's what they were thinking in the back of their minds, especially Dana, because she admitted she's more cautious and skeptical, whereas Greg is more of a believer firsthand.
So let's get into the email. So in 2012, Greg received an email. He happened to check his email from this website that they had as kids and happened to notice that there was an email from a David, what was his name?
Oh my God.
David
Christie. I was like, what is
We've been
it?
sitting here bitching about this forever and we can't remember his freaking name. From a David Christie saying, I think the subject line they said was urgent. In the body of the email, he proceeds to explain that there are little green goblin men coming out of the...
He didn't use the word green.
Okay, little goblin men, or goblin creatures.
He said creatures, yeah.
That came out of the caves, I guess, like, in his backyard area.
They were coming out of the mines in Hellier, Kentucky.
Now, this Hellier, Kentucky is in southeastern Kentucky. I'm actually very familiar with the area.
It's on the border of West Virginia.
It is a very remote area. I actually have a lot of family down that way, so I've spent a lot of time down there. They are not kidding when they say that there are abandoned mines and stuff that can be in people's backyards. Of course, you also consider, though, like, people, like, backyards down there aren't what you consider backyards here. Like, backyards down there are like, you have a mountainside in your backyard and you have a little trail that leads up into like a big holler of mountains and stuff. So it's very remote, very thick, dense forests, lots of little creeks, lots of hidden caves. It's not something you usually experience.
It's vast nature, yeah, and not a lot of people.
No, the thing is, though, there's that, like, you can easily disappear in those mountains and live off the land and no one would ever know that you're up there.
It's interesting. So this Mr. David Christie had mentioned that these little creatures were terrorizing people. Greg had replied and asked the guy for more info, 'cause he was a little interested in it, but he kind of wanted proof, So Christie had written him back and wrote him like 3 pages worth, giving him all this detailed information about how the creatures were terrorizing him and his family.
They even, like, killed his dog.
His dog ended up disappearing. And he spotted them. He described them as bald and
Had big round
eyes.
glass eyes.
Yeah. And
He only stood about 3 feet tall.
and then David ended up sending some photos for proof. He had these pictures of footprints in the mud. Basically, it was kind of similar to a human foot, but there was no heel and 3 big toes.
Well, Greg had proceeded to post it to social media, and no one could really cite what kind of animal it could possibly be, and that it could definitely not be like a hoax.
Right. Yeah, because there were the, what is that called? The lines. You could see the lines in the footprint.
Yeah, like a little indent lines and stuff.
Yeah.
They explain it a lot better than what we are in the documentary.
I forget the proper terminology for it.
So,
And, well, he also had a few pictures resembling extraterrestrials. But those pictures were dark and a little blurry. You couldn't really tell. So you could go in and kind of draw out something that, resembled an alien form, that what we usually see in mainstream media type things.
so what makes it even more interesting, that in 1955 in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, there was a supposed UFO landing crash into the field of some farmers. And these little men, bald men, had come out about 3 feet tall, and they were trying to get into the home of the farmers, and that the farmers were shooting at them and that the bullets wouldn't penetrate them.
Supposedly happened on August 21st, 1955. And these people were so terrified that they went to the police, and the police were kind of, they thought it was odd because they know if it was a problem that they could solve with their guns, they would have solved it, because people aren't normally scared over in that area. Take kind of matters in their own hands, I guess.
Well, back in 1955, everybody took matters in their own hands.
For sure. So the police went in to investigate. They didn't obviously find any little creatures. They didn't find any footprints. And they obviously didn't find any kind of UFO craft. All they did find were the bullets.
But they did compare the drawings that they had done in 1955 to the ones that they got from David, and they were identical.
Yeah, they're very similar. The drawings of the so-called goblins that they were dubbed, they had these kind of elephant-looking ears, and they did have big eyes, but they're kind of like goggly looking. It was also noted that this UFO had landed near a mine or a cave on the property. So it kind of plays upon that these creatures had gone into the caves, I guess, to live and protect themselves.
Well, here's another interesting little fact is that those who aren't really familiar with this southeastern part of the United States, the Mammoth Cave system is vast. I know growing up where I did, which was in northern Indiana, that it even ran all the way up there, and it was running all the way down, you may think, into Tennessee, all the way up even into Vermont. And so they believe that how these goblins or these aliens are, moving underground is through the Mammoth Cave system.
Yeah, because it's spread out through all these states, and all these states have had, their strange little sightings and people gone missing, and it's kind of along the lines of this cave system. I also thought it was interesting. I came across an article about the sighting in 1955, and one of the police officers noted that there was a meteor shower that night.
But yeah, you can look all this up online about the landing in Hopkinsville, and you can do your own research. You can see that that is credible.
Also to note, Hopkinsville is in the opposite end of Kentucky.
Yeah, it's on the western part of Kentucky.
Yes, miles away from Hellier.
Very far away. It's probably, what they say, like 5 hours from each other.
I'm not sure. I know it was
quite
far when I saw it on the map. So one of our biggest questions about these photographs that Greg had received was, did he look at the metadata on the photos? So I took to the internet to see if I could find any information on it.
For those of you who don't know what metadata is in photos, is that when you take a photo, that it can actually have GPS coordinates of where you took the photo. It gives you the time and date and all the settings that you used when you took the photo. There's a lot of information and data that is stored in a photo. So
yeah, it's kind of like a fingerprint of the photo.
Yeah, so remember, if you ever send a photo out there, or you don't want it to be traced, wipe the metadata.
So I actually found Greg Newkirk's answer to this on a Reddit forum for Hellier. And I'll just quote what he said. I see people have already answered this, but yeah, we checked the EXIF data, and the images were from an old Canon PowerShot camera without GPS capabilities. That said, the dates and times of the images match the claims. They didn't appear to have been run through an editing program, and Carl was even able to find a very similar model camera and recreate the photos of the creatures Using the recorded local distances, flash, zoom, and David's description of the creatures, Carl matched it all up. The description of the photos are bang on for the proper focal lengths and zooms and stuff. So the images appear to be legit and match the description in the email, even if the creatures themselves are debatable. We almost included all this in season 2, but last season people were bored by all the forensic stuff, so we decided to axe it. End quote. Obviously enough people had that question.
People like us want to know the forensic part of it, but I can understand you out there, and you have to maintain a certain entertainment value for those people who don't care about details about it like this.
Right. Or even think of saying, hey, check this. So needless to say, Greg had written back David and said, yeah, I'd love to go check it out. But David never responded. They never, ever heard from him again. And in David's last email, he did say he had to pretty much uproot his family.
He had already fled the house. He had already moved his family out, and he was going back there for a couple nights just to pack the rest of their belongings, and he was never going back because things had gotten so bad.
Right. So let's touch upon the fact that when David first emailed Greg, or was it in the second email? I can't remember which. He said he got the email from a mutual contact.
Now, he got Greg's email from a mutual contact.
Correct. Who was named Terry Wrist.
Yeah, who that contact was named Terry Wrist, which Greg had no idea who this Terry Wrist was.
Yeah, he thought that the name was a pseudonym for terrorist, because it's Terry and Wrist. He took to the internet, searched the name, and the only thing he found was a book written in 1994 by Alan Greenfield. It was called Secret Cipher of the
Equinox.
Ufonauts. Ufonauts? Is UFO knots.
Ufonauts.
Yeah. So I guess in the back of the book, this Terry R. Wrist, he claimed to be a Vietnam vet, and he had gone around with other Vietnam vets, and I guess raided these caves and mines for aliens.
Yeah, and I think they said they actually were killing the aliens.
Right.
And, like, hiding in little holes and killing them. We should see if we can find this book on Amazon.
I think it's on Amazon
and
still.
order it. That'd be interesting to read.
Yeah, it would be. So during the same year, in 2012, the Newkirks had gone to, I think it was Brown Mountain in North Carolina. They were doing some kind of filming there, and their guide that was walking them around, he had said, this psychic had said there was a cave entrance where aliens had set up a base. So the guide had led them to this area that matched the description of what she described, and they went inside the cave, but they couldn't go any further because there was this random, strange rock wall in their way.
That they claimed that looked like it was just placed there, like it wasn't naturally placed there.
Right. Yeah, it was kind of interesting.
I don't know about you, but I'd be, like, digging like hell to get through there and be like, my ass could fit through that little hole right there.
Or try to find another way in. But he surprisingly returned to an email from this Terry Wrist asking why they stopped looking, why they didn't go any further into this cave, why they didn't find another way in. He started using, I can't think of the word for it. He was basically saying the door's closed, but there are window areas to get into. And Greg kind of related that to thin veils. And they were kind of touching upon things coming into our world through veils, like through another dimension. So I thought that was an interesting theory.
If you're a little confused, she's referring to that after they got back from their trip from North Carolina, that Greg received an email from Terry Wrist, his first email from Terry Wrist. The email had a lot of broken English, a lot of misspelled words, but he somehow knew that they were there. He knew that they were there at that gate, and didn't proceed to go further in.
Right.
So saying that was a doorway into another dimension.
Yeah, basically, that there's some kind of portal in that area.
Which is interesting because that's how they kind of don't view as aliens from outer space, but aliens that come from different dimensions or different portals, and that's how they get in, is through windows and doors.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a new theory for me, which is very interesting.
It is interesting. As they brought it up, like, that could be how other people were theorizing that the Mothman, that's how that creature has come over into our world. Shadow people, all these strange things. So
Are from
right.
different dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
Are they is dimensions different than alternate or parallel universe? I think they're different.
Well,
Parallel, I think it's just like, well, if you went right, this is what would happen if you went left, you know. Whereas dimensions is
from the stuff I was looking at and reading, parallel universe just means the universe right next to ours. It doesn't mean it's similar and that everything that's happening in ours is happening in that one. It just means it's right next door.
Mm.
So
different dimension is like the upside down.
Oh my God.
For those who don't know, I'm talking about Stranger Things.
So there was another little segue. They went to Cave City in Kentucky to film. And during this time, they were approached by a little girl. And this little girl started telling them about the monsters that her and her family have seen. And they said these monsters were coming out of the caves. So she drew them a picture of what the footprint looks like and what the head of these creatures look like. And they had matched the photographs that they had seen that David had sent them of the footprint. And the drawing had matched that from like the police officers back in 1955.
Cue the beginning of the synchronicities.
Yeah.
That's a word you're going to be hearing a lot from us in this series.
So finally, in October of 2015, Greg and Dana decided to go visit Hellier. They just went around and they were asking locals about the photographs, see if they've seen anything strange. And they had asked people if they had known anybody by the name of David Christie. And nobody did. Not even like the oldest living person in that town they could find.
The town elders.
He had no idea who this person was. Never heard of him. And this Christie guy, who was supposedly a doctor, and that's why he never had come forward about all these sightings he saw. So anyway, they drove around town, hoping that they could find Christie's house. And they did find a house that had been abandoned for what looked like that span of a few years from Christie's last emails. Overgrown grass. It had a shed in the back like Christie's did. It had a lot of similarities, so they really thought it was his house. Mm-hmm. That's basically where episode 1 had left off.
Yep, where they had gone down there and visited. It was quite nostalgic for me because they do have a lot of talk from the locals. The locals even went as far as to talk about an alien sighting, a spaceship sighting that hovered in the sky for 2 hours over Hellier. And this is you can look this all up online. Like this was covered by their news station.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
So that all can be, it's all a reputable source.
Right, it happened.
Yeah.
He also mentioned, this one guy also mentioned that he did get a glimpse of Bigfoot crossing the road, jumping the guardrail and going into the woods.
Yeah, the one thing you have to realize, though, about down there is that it's so remote and you're practically related to everybody because there's so few people down there. Mm-hmm. That you know everybody and their brother's cousin's daughter type deal, so that when somebody new comes along, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, I saw that right there and it happened. I swear to my daddy.
Hey, it could have been Bigfoot.
It could have been.
It could have been a man living in the mountains, just let himself go and.
No, yeah. I'm not kidding. Like,
we don't know, but yeah, it's very interesting. Posing makes you think. And it definitely has some interesting turns about where it's going.
What I would really like to do, because like I said, I have a lot of family in that specific area. It's in Pike County, Kentucky. I've been to that county. I can't tell you how many times. I'm pretty sure my aunt and my cousins, they live in Pike County. And a lot of my family members let me go back a little bit. The main industry down there is coal mining. That's why there's aside from the Mammoth Cave system, you have all these open coal mines. And a lot of my family, that was their living. They were coal miners. And I'm not particularly on speaking terms with that side of the family, but how tempted am I to ask them if they ever saw any
Little goblins.
any goblins down there in them coal mines.
Yeah.
But I remember as a kid going into those mines and playing in them, playing in the openings of the caves and stuff like that. We weren't afraid. We were kids. We were kids of the 90s. And you had no fear.
Right.
So the goblins were something you never thought of. And seeing the people down there, they're just such a good, wholesome type of person that they don't really think of anything as malicious. They don't really, if they see something weird, they're just like, huh, that's weird. And then they go on about their life. They don't really delve a lot into it because the people down there are so family oriented and living their life that they don't really let a whole lot of weird things bother them.
Okay, so on the topic of the people, because at least I got to ask you as we were watching this, how the people really are down there. How would they be welcoming to these strangers coming in, asking them questions, and then obviously the whole docuseries did start tourists going there, investigators going there, and some people were getting out of line. So how would the people react to strangers there?
Well, they call them English, the English people. Not well. When I would go down there as a child, it was fine for us because everybody knew my mommy. Everybody knew my granny, and they knew my aunts and my uncles. They knew who I was through them. So I was okay. I was accepted. But if you go down there and you don't know anybody, and you're asking all these questions, and you're being invasive, that's very dangerous. That is very, very dangerous because you can easily disappear in those mountains, and you will never be found because they are such dense, thick. I mean, I'm talking thousands upon thousands of miles of nothing but huge mountain areas where you can just go up there and you can disappear and you'll never be found.
Yeah.
I know we're in the Adirondack regions. The Adirondacks are just a small little cluster compared to the Appalachian Mountains. I think they call it the Appalachian Mountains.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a vast system.
Mm-hmm.
It's very vast. I saw something online that they were doing making, I can't remember the name of it, but they're kind of doing a tourist park, and they've got it pathed out. And I want to think it was 400 miles or something.
Oh, yeah.
And they were going to extend it to a 600-mile thing. And just it's insane that it's just... And just looking at the map and looking how it expands and it goes really south. I think it even went into Alabama. Like you said, all the way up into Vermont.
Mm-hmm.
It's huge. It's good chunk of the U.S. right there.
But if you want to go down there and you want to ask questions, you want to investigate, just learn to talk like them, and you'll be okay. But if you go down there with an accent that is not of their own, and you can't say you're related to so and so, you might find that you have a difficult time on maneuvering the locals. They are like I said, they are some of the sweetest people in the world, but you have to be careful.
Don't go poking your nose.
Yeah. And just learn to talk like them and
be respectful. If you're gonna go do that stuff, don't just go walking around people's property or anything. Not that Greg and Dana did any of this. They were always asking, and they were.
If you walk around people's property in the South like that, you're gonna get shot.
Oh, I'm sure.
Flat out.
I would never do that. I wouldn't do that anywhere. I'd ask first.
I mean, these people legit have their relatives buried in their backyard. I can't tell you the thousands of houses that I passed growing up as a kid that had tombstones and crosses in their backyards because that's where they buried their family.
Right.
I could tell you stories about people who threw their relatives down the well, but never mind. We can do a whole series on people from southeastern Kentucky.
Do you have anything else you want to touch upon on this first episode?
I think we covered it pretty well. It gives you enough to spark your interest to want to keep going. They bait the hook really well for the first episode. There's a whole lot more to get into, but it's too soon yet. We need to do more research on the deeper things that are to come. I cannot recommend this series enough. That if you're interested in it. If aliens really aren't your thing, don't worry about that, because that's just a very small piece to a much bigger puzzle.
And speaking from personal feelings,
It's
it's very true.
She abhors anything that's aliens.
It's not my thing, but I always keep an open mind. It's just not something that's ever interested me.
This will be the end of episode 1. I think we're going to go episode by episode. Sometimes we might combine them depending on
the content and how much we have to work with.
of each episode. But so far, good start.
Yeah.
So stay tuned. We're going to cover, like I said, each episode. And we're going to delve further into this. See what we can come up with our own theories and stuff.
Yeah.
So definitely, like I said, watch it. For more of our content, you can visit us online at Paranormal Noise on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and at Paranormal Noise Podcast on Instagram and TikTok.
All topics discussed in our Paranormal Noise podcast are for entertainment purposes only. All views and opinions expressed in this podcast are ours and do not represent the opinions of any entity whatsoever with which we have been, are now, or will be affiliated. Any content provided by our guests is of their opinion and is not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, or anyone or anything.